together and do this little event to kind of help the newer investor scale his business or buy their first property or whatever that is. So we have a great panel worth of like really smart guys up here. Next time I'll have one. Just for
Sure.
But we have a great panel. They're going to answer some questions from you. They're going to answer some questions from Ben. We're going to start off by introducing Sheva, who sponsored this event by buying beer.
Awesome. Thank you.
Let's see if you want to can.
That's fine. I mean, first thing I'm going to start off with, I completely forgot my business cards today, so you will not see my number out there right now, but I'm a mortgage lender with Great Plains Bank. I'm basically just here to talk about, what we as lenders look for if you're wanting to finance your investment purchases, kind of the stuff you might need to have ready on hand. Talk a little bit about the process and get into that closing for whether it's your first one or maybe you've done a bunch of them and you're still kind of unsure how the whole financing portion works. So that's me.
Awesome. Go for it, guys.
Cool. All right, so we'll start down there in. There is Levi Ballard. He is a commercial broker with Newmark, but he's also a real estate investor on the residential side. So Levi and I connected through a platform called Bigger Pockets. I host a Zoom call every 2 weeks. We got to be good friends, and so I asked him to come talk about. He's provided a lot of value to me and some of the other people in the group, so I thought he'd be a good resource. You met Sheva. This is Eric Silva.
This is Eric Silva.
Yeah, maybe I should let Kim.
Yeah. Kim talk. Yeah.
I forgot. Eric Silva is an amazingly dressed man, and he always dresses like this. No, he does not. No, he does great in investment properties. He is super smart. He is like ahead of the curve and ahead of his age group. I'm going to talk great about him because I think he's an awesome person, but he doesn't only care about having great properties, but he cares about the community and giving great houses to a lot of great people. So he has tons of rental properties, and he built his first duplex. That I love being a part of that process. So ask him a lot of questions.
Yeah, so we met Eric, and then next to me is Jared Smith. He is the co-owner and broker of Weston Maine here. So thank him for allowing us to have this space.
Yay.
So we appreciate Jared. Jared's a really smart guy. He's done a lot and he's just done a lot. Yeah. No, but he's a very savvy real estate investor. He's really scaled his business to some really impressive levels. He also does some wholesaling as well, right? And he's just built, I guess, is it 6 single family homes?
We've got, so I'll jump in real quick for you. And kind of transpired and basically scaled, like kind of what we're talking about today, scaled up to doing new construction. We actually have phase 1 of 3, and there's 5 single families there over on 42nd Western. And there's 18 total units over there that are going to be built. What we thought was going to be maybe a 18 to 2 year period, which is probably going to be more like 3 to 4 years now with all the fun stuff going on. So yeah, welcome. We love agents choosing the space. It's a great space. It's why we have it. So you make yourself at home. Beer. I know everyone's here for the beer and the food. Moggason's awesome. So thank them as well. And panel's awesome. I've known Eric for a while. I've done deals with everybody. So like really cool panel today. So fire away.
Cool. Well, I think the first question I wanted to ask everybody, because it's always kind of fun to look back at your first deal. I think it'd be kind of cool to talk about that first deal, how you found it, how you, the mistakes you made, and then how you've grown from there. So Levi, tell us about your first residential real estate investment deal.
It was a mistake.
Okay.
So I
It was a learning opportunity.
I previously worked W-2 corporate job, and I was growing restless in that job, looking for any opportunity to make money any other way. And I've always been fascinated with real estate, but I never thought about it from an investment standpoint. And I got to just hunt and pecking on Zillow at the time, I think. And
What year was this?
2013, 2012, 2013. And started looking at, when I moved here, I rented an apartment I never rented a house before, and started looking at the rental prices versus the purchase price. I was quick enough to do a mortgage calculator online for free. It was just astounded at the gap, which was not that great compared to what I know now, but there's a difference. I can just put that extra money in my pocket. And so got to talking with a buddy at work and was explaining the same to him, and said, I think you could actually make some money doing this. But I never like calculated how much money. Never thought about maintenance, CapEx, or vacancy, any of those things. Literally was just focused on the gap between the mortgage and rent. And I'm going to buy a safe house. I hate it, I'll sell it. So I bought a 3-2 two-car garage, fairly new build in Edmond. First one was Edmond Schools. And I just thought, man, I'm going to rent to families. This will be great. And so that was my first deal. Marketed it before we closed because I was so nervous that I wasn't going to be able to rent it. Had like 25 showings the day we closed in the morning, went straight there and was just hoping the house was clean. It was. And people started showing up. We rented it that day. And
Just to jump in, you can't do that. Yeah, you can't market, just so everybody knows.
you can't with the signature from the seller.
Oh, you can? Okay, I stand corrected then. All right, well.
Yeah, no, you can't just like put a sign there.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, good. All right.
Okay. I knew enough. Anyway, so bought that, still own it. It's been a decent house for it. I wouldn't say I'd buy it again, but it's been a good one. It definitely kicked off a fun journey. So it was my first.
Cool, man. And that was in Edmond Schools?
Yeah, Edmond Schools, 164th in May. And I said 322.
Remember what your mortgage was against your,
I think it was a gap of like at the time, I think it was a gap of maybe $300.
Yeah.
$50 a month.
that's good.
But by the time you factor in, like I said, it didn't look good on paper now, but again, there's something to be said for a newer construction home. You know, I haven't had the CapEx expense that I would predict for other older homes, and like I said, I still own it, obviously.
Wasn't that bad?
Yeah, run streaming for it.
All right, what about you, Eric?
Is it 20% down or?
Yeah, actually did a personal mortgage on that one with BOK, still didn't know what I was doing. We got a great rate, but just 20% down.
Cool. What about you, Eric? First deal?
Oh, man. Okay, so first deal was a duplex. It was 2 units, 3 bedroom, 2 bath each side. No, your deal, you told me maybe second or third. Yeah, you were one of the first ones. But yeah, this one was just pretty standard. Just like Levi, 20% down. Northwest part of Oklahoma City, and great location. And I like Levi. I was just looking at the mortgage, what that was going to be versus what I could rent it out, right? And I didn't really care too much about CapEx and all that. I was newer, and to be honest, it took me a while to get that first one. I was studying real estate for maybe 2, almost 3 years before I pulled the trigger on one. And simultaneously I was in college. I was studying finance, studying real estate. I have a major in finance, minor in real estate. So I got pretty familiar with it before I actually took action, right? And that's definitely something that I recommend is learn the language, right? Learn the language of real estate, learn, the how-to, study up on it, podcast, books. I just immersed myself in it, right? And then finally felt comfortable enough to, partner up with someone, take their capital, and then just place it into an investment property. And it was a standard deal, 20% down. And that was the first one. Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Jared?
I don't remember. No, so mine's a little bit different, like it says circa 2007, before Bigger Pockets, which I assume everyone knows Bigger Pockets now. If you don't, Google search that when you leave. It literally is an insane amount of just stuff that you can learn before. But it was a duplex. Trying to think of what I paid for it. I paid an insanely low amount for it, and it's probably worth about 6 times what it was. But yeah, I didn't do a whole lot. I've kind of always been around real estate and doing deals. I kind of came from oil and gas and, flipping minerals, doing all kinds of stuff in that. And it's basically the same game, I guess you can say. Oil and gas in Oklahoma, as we all know, it's up and down, up and down, up and down. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of done with this. I want to put not really done with it at the time, but I was like, I want a second income. So I found a duplex over on Northeast 18th Street. Didn't really know a ton. It's kind of one of those, it was more like I was dumb luck. I kind of jumped in, paid literally nothing. It was renting for, I mean, an insane amount over what the mortgage was going to be, and also didn't really take into effect that it needed pretty much everything. It really needed to probably be bulldozed, and it might be bulldozed at this time. I really don't know if it's still there or not. But yeah, I mean, first deal is just to go. It's, you know, it's not going to be the greatest deal that you ever do probably, but it's going to be worth the most because you learn and you get all that, like, that's, you know, nervousness, and yeah, it may not cash flow as much as you want, but that first deal is big. As I talk to any first investors or just people that, you know, and people even have got one or two, that first deal, it's like, okay, you get into it, you make it work. It may not be cash flowing as much, but you know, it's that first deal that you have to, you know, you do, but it worked out well. I had it for several years and ended up selling it. I didn't take into effect as much of the upkeep and maintenance issues that were going to come into a house, because it wasn't, I think it was probably a 1920s built duplex. And luckily over like 4 or 5 years, I kind of banked a little bit and we did a full renovation on it. But yeah, it was good investment, bad investment, but it was a learning curve. So
Yeah, and so I think to Jared's point, you know, oftentimes your first deal, if you look back in your investment career, you do 100 deals, there's probably maybe only going to be 8 or 9 that are home runs, but you can really build a lot of wealth with singles and doubles. And so I think what each of them said was they took massive action. They decided, I'm going to do this, and they made mistakes along the way, but everything they learned from those first deals made up for any equity or money or anything not that they lost money, but they could have made more. But it's that knowledge base that oftentimes you're getting in that first deal. What are you guys' impressions of this market right now? Because it's a very tough market for everybody. Inventory's low. We have out-of-state buyers coming in, buying up rental property. We have, you know, people from out of state moving here. What's your impression of the market right now? Is this a good time to jump into real estate? Is it, do you see a correction coming? There's so much talk in the media about the current climate. And as boots on the ground investors, and I'll start with you, Levi, what do you think of the current climate right now? And is this a good time to jump in?
I'll be honest, something I've thought about a lot. And somebody told me once, I mean, the best time to invest in real estate was yesterday, the worst time is tomorrow. I think anytime you hear seasoned investors, not seasoned, any investor saying that things are overpriced, probably an opportunity. Obviously, we're used to prices. I've been investing for 8-9 years, and it's hard to change that mindset from what I might have gotten 5 or 6 years ago, right? Does that mean there aren't deals now? Absolutely not. In fact, somebody who's willing to jump in and go after a deal now might beat somebody like myself out because I hesitate a moment too long because it doesn't quite meet a metric that I would have gotten years ago. So I don't think it's a bad time to invest here. I won't speak for other markets. I don't know the markets, but for Oklahoma City and really the surrounding area, extended metro area, I think there's a lot of opportunity for anybody that's lived in Oklahoma City for any length of time, seen a radical adjustment to certain parts of town that might have been considered dangerous 10 years ago. When I moved to the city, the Plaza was one of those dangerous parts of town. Right.
the office we're in right now.
Yeah, right. I mean, exactly. Downtown was a ghost land, and now it's picking up. Capitol Hill, northeast side of Oklahoma City. There's a lot of areas that are exploding, and there's still deals to be found. So while I struggle with the bias of the areas that I have historically bought in being probably overpriced, that doesn't mean that there aren't other opportunities in other parts of the city.
Okay, cool. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, right? So, you heard that saying, don't wait to buy real estate, just buy real estate, and wait. Don't wait to time the market, right? I've bought in 5 houses within the last month or so, right? And so those are, just good opportunities that have come my way, right? And it's just stuff that I'm jumping on, right? If the numbers make sense, I'll jump on it, right? I try to like keep, the high prices, try to keep that aside. I know that we're at a kind of the top of the market. And to me, I'm kind of using that to my advantage, right? I'm looking at the inflation, right? And so I don't want to be sitting on a lot of cash right now because that cash is going to be worth less tomorrow, right? The way that inflation is going. And so to me, it's just, I want to put my name on as much real estate and real assets as possible because that's going to be tied to inflation, right? Historically, real estate has done well with inflation. And so I'm anticipating, a higher inflation, in the next 2 or 3 years, right? And so I'm kind of using that to place my money there and wait for the asset to increase in value. Just look at fundamentals, right? Look at what you're buying it for, look what it's going to be worth, how much you're going to put into it, what's the repairs going to be. Look at those fundamentals, and I say, just don't, because if you hesitate, like you're always going to hesitate, right? If you're always, going to be thinking like, oh, prices are too high. Well, when the market drops, you're going to be thinking, well, the mark's, in a bad shape, and you're not going to take action. Right? So for me, it just, I'm constantly looking at opportunities, and evaluate your personal situation, right? How much risk you're willing to take, right? I'm a younger guy, if things were to turn south, I'll have some time to make up for it, right? If I'll just it'll be a learning. I'm not saying that at all. A little bit. But yeah, that's where I'm at on that.
Well, cool, Eric. I mean, Jared, you started in 2007, so that was kind of like.
I mean, it was a crazy time to start because so this will be it's 2007, obviously in Oklahoma. If you're here, 2008, 9, oil was insane in 8, then the market crashed. It was an interesting time. I was, like I said, I was kind of young and dumb and had some extra cash, and these houses, like I said, if I could do it over again, I would have literally hit up every person I know to buy. But that's like every person that looks back in the rearview mirror and is like, woulda, shoulda, coulda, of course. But as to the market, that's a trick question a little bit, because like to each his own on that. Yeah, I like to deal in intangibles that we can have a control on. And so like I always look at stuff and like I can't control if the market crashes or whatnot, but what I can control is that property staying rented or the saying is like buying right. If you at a property, maybe you just have cash that you need to put into something or whatnot, it's always about the buy. And I don't care if it was 2007 to 1980, whatever year, if you buy right and the deal works there, you can make it work. And so I kind of built my portfolio over properties that, value add properties to where, I didn't mind. And I think Eric too, as well. I didn't mind going in and doing some work. At the time I was doing a lot of it, doing some value add. So I for sure was buying low, putting that value add into remodeling and doing whatever. And then renting those out. But market is the market. It's crazy. It's super high right now. We all know inflation is at an all-time high, so your dollar's not worth as much. So you do see a bunch of people dumping into actual assets. And so I think it's as good a time as any. Like we all say. I mean, I can look at the properties that I passed on at the time, even a year ago, that was like, oh my gosh, it was too high. And now I'm laughing because I'm like, holy crap, should have bought that. That's, that's about, that's gone up, an X amount. So there's never a right or wrong time. It's like I said, it's a trick question because there's so much out there, and I know that's, not nailing down exactly what you're wanting to hear, but it's kind of just jumping in and, buying right and making sure that works, and then kind of moving forward. Some years you may make more and some not, but real estate's a long-term investment unless you're just doing wholesale flips or jumping in and getting out. So, I mean, no matter the market, there's deals to be found and there's deals to be had. Just, you have to work harder and you have to look at a lot more things now, and put in a little bit more work than what you would have, in a down market. And, some of us are licking our chops for a down market, and to start buying a lot more, but that's not to say that there's not deals out there and stuff that can cash flow and work. I could do I could do a whole like 4-hour deal on that. But
But I'll, because it sounds like all three of you got your first deal with finance. So it's not like you had just a lot of cash laying around. So you put your 20% down, but there was the bank playing a role in creating that first step. So I wanted to ask Shiva, financing is such a critical part of getting started in real estate investing. A lot of us have bought a house as owner occupied. So if it was FHA, we did 3.5% down or 5% conventional. But when you're financing investment property, it's much different. So Shiva, if you could talk to what are some things that you like to see from potential investors, whether that be their financial statement or what is it you like to see when somebody's bringing forward potentially to invest in a deal?
So just one thing you said that, if it's owner occupied FHA, you put 3.5% down. Well, you can do that with investment properties as well, as long as you're living in one of the units.
Good point.
I think that's a big thing for investors. If you're not tied to a home and you want to get into investments, like purchase a property FHA and live in one of the units and rent out the other ones. You cover your mortgage, you'll make extra money, and you cover your pay. You're living in that area, right? The biggest thing when investors come to a bank is finances kind of have to be in order. So if you're someone who's put off your tax returns or you're not exactly sure how you want to set up your business, you want to do it as an LLC, you want to do it as an S corp, you have partners, are you going to get K1 shareholders return on all this? All that stuff, we need to be able to see that. We have to prove not only with the property itself, the property is going to have to cash flow and cover, but that you financially invested are just as sound. So I'll give you an example on the FHA property that I was just talking about. Part of the appraisal process for that would be looking at the market rents for units of that type. And basically there's a mathematical formula or whatever that you can do that says you cannot exceed, like the cost of this property cannot exceed 100% of the rents received. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio or less. The cost can be 0.5% to 1%. If that's all sound, then we want to make sure that you, as the investor, are also financially sound. So we'll take a look at your debts. If you have like a lot of car notes and all that stuff that are financed under you personally and not under a business, that can affect you. If they are part of a business that you've already set up, then you have some legal work. A lot of people ask about rates and stuff like that. Well, that stuff moves up and down and depends on a whole lot of stuff. Without getting too technical, just make sure that your tax returns look sound. You're showing some kind of profit if you already have this business coming into it. If you want to start out right now, make sure your regular income's there to support it, because those are the things that we're going to look at qualify you as an investor.
Cool. Well, the topic of this talk was how to get started and scale, which I think, I know several of the folks out here that have maybe 1 or 2 investment properties, but how do you get to that next level? And like Levi, how do you move from what systems or what relationships did you build to scale your business from those first couple you purchased to where you are right now?
Hang on, Levi. Real quick, I kind of want to just know kind of what who has properties and who's like doesn't have any property looking to buy, like we're kind of, like you guys, just to show of hands, like if you have properties, you guys looking for first buy, just because that'll help,
Yeah, that'll help.
that'll help like kind of put what kind of lever, because some of the things that we might talk about might be, you know, a little bit.
How many
overhead, so-
have investment properties?
Cool.
Okay, and first time, the rest are thinking about it.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. That helps us out.
All right, so processes and scaling.
Yeah, how do you scale? Like, what do you have your 20% down, you put your first deal, like, how do you get to the next deal?
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a big question, I think.
That's why we brought you here.
Right, all right.
Yeah.
The answer a couple different ways.
I don't want softball.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. No, I mean, to me, that breaks down into, I think, two categories, which would be financially. How do you continue to roll those funds or add additional funds to acquire more property? And then the other one is how do you continue to refine processes or standardize processes so that you can manage a portfolio of property. A lot different to manage one or two properties, whether you are self-managing from a property management standpoint or you have a third party that's managing it. There is still the management of a business, and that changes honestly quite drastically as you go from 1 or 2 to 10 or 15. So I guess to both sides of that. On the processes for us, honestly, there's a lot of trial and error. We hit a wall at around 5 or 6 properties. My wife and I, we self-manage our properties. And so we had that component, and it started to become a lot to keep up with leases or amendments, renewals, all the physical forms that need to be signed, whether you're signing them digitally or not. And also just maintenance requests and all those things. The good news is we live in the 21st century and technology is our friend. There are a lot of different platforms. Apple, Building, Stessa, Zillow has one. There's a lot of those that help collect rent, that help with the organization and structure of property investment. Okay. And they're all a little different, and I'll allow everyone to kind of do their own research. But that's when we started trying to put systems in place to have repeatable results, regardless of where the house was located, what type the house was, the size of the house, all those things. It's a lot to manage even now for us, and I could probably do better than what I do.
What software are you guys using? What software are you using?
I actually don't use, we used Cozy for a long time when it was still a thing. We shifted to apartments for our rent collection, which I'm not gonna have, but I have used Building in the past on certain sections of portfolio, and it's great. But we've kind of fallen into where we just work for rent collection and everything else we kind of piecemeal together. But again, and that's the answer, is everyone can do it differently. It's what works for you. But seek out those systems, whether it's software assisted or not, help make life easier.
But what was one system that you feel like maybe changed your business, if there is one, or one?
I mean, I would say when we started, we were not doing online rent collection. That was a kind of a newer thing when I started, and that's been a huge difference. I mean, not having to go check a PO box or rent. I still have some tenants to do that, and it's part of it, but for the most part, everything comes through automatically. That's probably the biggest system.
And what we use for rent collection kind of helps on if people aren't paying online, right? They don't have an avenue for that. We use Pay Near Me, right? So they get a barcode and they can go up to a 7-Eleven, a CVS, and they take that barcode and then they can pay cash, right? And then that gets directly deposited to our bank account, and that syncs up well with Building, right? So that was huge for me because I have a lot of properties in the South Side, right? Some people aren't familiar with the online payments. And that really exactly, cash, right? And it just makes it convenient for them. And it's just kind of an amenity that you get to offer your tenants, right? Like, hey, you can pay at any location and, you don't have to worry about dropping in a check or,
So that links with Building.
It links with Building. Yeah,
Okay.
that made it, that was huge for us.
I think it also links to that folio.
It links with a lot. So yeah, so what they're talking about, if you guys don't, or if you go to a 7-Eleven, at the end of the month, first of the month, and there's a line at the ATM area or whatever, it's normally people paying their bills, and you can, it's really cool, actually. You can go in and pay, I think OG&E, and then also now there's what's the company?
Pay Near Me.
Yeah, Pay Near Me, that allows people to pay rent as well. You pay a fee and everything, just like you pay an online fee as well.
It's like $2 or $3.
Yeah,
It's not too
it's absolutely worth it. I mean, at first, once you get a couple of properties, I mean, you can keep up with a couple of properties. Like I think they were saying, after you get a few, I guess the biggest thing is kind of know your lane, like know what you're kind of good at, and be like, okay, if you have the time to manage one or two or whatever. I have friends that do have time. I have friends that absolutely want nothing to do with it. And they're like, hey, I want somebody else to manage it, find a management company or whatnot. But yeah, Buildium, I would say, is like probably the best for not mom and pop shops. It was literally built for mom and pop shops. And that's not to say that's a bad thing. It's literally, I would say, up to like 100 units or so. Anyone can use it. It's super user friendly. So if you guys are like looking for some software to probably go to, it's probably the most user friendly and maybe the most affordable. I haven't looked lately. We just switched over to AppFolio, just for a scale wise and just the sheer number. Don't even look at AppFolio because it's expensive and it's probably not worth it. Buildium is probably your best bet there. And online pay. Yeah, online pay is like maybe the biggest thing, because the last thing you want to do is like you hear the stories of, you don't want to be a debt collector. That's not why you get into this. You don't want to be chasing people for rent. And we've all done it. Like, there's no doubt. And we've all let someone, oh, I'll pay half down or I'll pay you whatever. And 3 months later, you're having to evict that person and you didn't get it done. But yeah, I would say like Buildium is like one of the first things I would set up. Because they do like a 0 to 10. I don't know. They've changed since I've used it, but
Pricing is flexible.
very flexible on like it's like 0 to 10 units is one price, and it's very affordable and very much well worth it.
Well, one thing, Levi, when we talked, you for service requests, you charge $75 for the service request, and if it's legit, then they're refunded or?
Oh, I don't do 75. Yeah.
Wow, I want to hear about this.
I actually got into a fight with an eviction judge on this.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So another thing that we started right at the beginning is I actually use the Oklahoma Real Estate Commission forms for leases, addendums, anything, move-in inspection. They have all those stuff out on the website. And there's some arguments for and against that. I like it because when I have a prospective tenant, I can say, look, this is the state approved real estate lease, residential lease form, right? It's there to protect the tenant just as much as the landlord. And they don't feel like I'm pulling anything over. On that form, there is a line that basically has a trip charge fee. So if they do anything that breaks or violates the lease, then you have a blank to put it in. I think a lot of them it's $25, $35, something like that. You got to go out there to let them in because they lost their key, for example, right? I don't always charge it. I don't know about that guy. But if I have a pair quit and I do an eviction, I always charge it. And I put it on the itemized list, and I've had eviction judge fight me on it. And I said, this is the commission form. Yeah. And they let me have it. So I recommend that. It's a good one. And I mean, I would say that for me, to kind of follow up, online payments is huge. For me, I like to be pretty hands-on with the properties. And so whether I self-manage or have a third party manage that particular property, I still have a list of items that need addressed. Maybe not necessarily an urgent maintenance request, but something that I want to put on a list of future upgrades or future repairs that aren't pressing. And so one of the things I use for that is Trello, another app. It's fantastic. I kind of sort everything by property. And then if it's a self-managed property and a tenant calls me or my wife, we can just add it there. And our contractors have access to that. They're notified. and we can prioritize it, all those things. And so it's a real easy way, which I mean, building into these tools have a lot of that same functionality. So I think you need to always have two systems, but that's been another one that's been a game changer for us. Instead of having to try to like keep up with what I've assigned a contractor to do, it's all in one place. So again, just something that helps system-wise.
Okay. Underwriting deals.
And let me go back to
Yeah,
scaling,
go.
right? So Levi talked a little bit about scaling, when it comes to management, but you got to scale, to be able to acquire properties, right? So how do you do that? How do you scale the financing side to be able to have enough properties to be able to use systems like, Levi was talking about? So one of the things that was like game changer for me was I was, kind of putting 20% down on these first couple deals, right? And the first deal that I bought from Jared, one of the first ones. What expedited the process for me and really like it was a game changer was the concept of not saving the 20% down, right? But versus like building my equity into the deal, right? To where it's more like a sweat equity, right? Where it's like, the standard deal is like if that house is worth 100,000, right? You're going to save 20,000 to put 20% down, right? So that's your equity, right? So the game changer for me was, versus saving that, I'd rather just build that in, and right. And so how you do that is, you find a distressed property that needs a lot of work, right? And so then you can put in the work, the rehab to drive up that value, right? So if you find a house that's worth 50,000, you put about 25,000 into it in repairs and rehab, right? To drive up that value up to 100,000, right? And so the game changer was the private money, lines of credit, right? That I use those funds to purchase the distressed property that a bank's not going to lend on because it's just, it's just in too rough of a condition, right? A property has to be in a certain condition for a banker to lend on it. And these types of, yeah. So these properties that I was looking at, right, a bank wouldn't touch them because it was just too high risk, right? There was going to be too much work that needed to be put into it, right? So I thought, okay, let me go in with a line of credit, buy it, quote unquote cash, and then I put it in, put in a rehab of about 25,000, and I drive up that value, and the value is worth about 100,000 now, right? And so then I go to a bank, right, and then I say, hey, I have this property, it's free and clear, and then I say, hey, lend me about 80% of what that property is worth, or what that property appraises for, right? So if the property appraises for about 100,000, I take that, I go to the bank, I say, hey, look, if they appraise it for 100,000, you just need 20% equity, right? You don't need 20% cash. What you need is 20% equity. So it's worth 100,000, and you lend me, do a cash out refinance, lend me 80,000. And then what I did with that 80,000 is I took that money and then I paid back my line of credit and my rehab, right? And so I have this property, right, where I put either little to no money down. And that's how I was able to scale the acquisitions part of it, right? That was a game changer for me because I could start recycling money, start moving faster. I'm really impatient, right? Like I like to move 1,000 miles an hour, right? Like I'm not going to sit there and wait, 5-6 years to save 20% to get a property. So I was like trying to find those creative ways to work around that like kind of traditional system to expedite the process and get more properties under my belt, right?
How do you get that line of credit first? So you don't have.
Yeah, so you can partner with people that have access to a line of credit, right? And so you could say, hey, that's what I did, right? So they had, free and clear property that they had line of credits that they could tie it to. And then we came in and we formed a kind of a joint, partnership that we took ownership, right? Now I have so once I built up the credibility, once I built up more resources, more knowledge, I use private money, right? So I have, I work with brokers, right? I get in contact with them and they have private individuals that have money saved and they lend me the money to buy these deals, right? The private money is more expensive, right? So I'm paying about 12% on the interest, but they'll charge me 2% of the total loan. But I put zero money down, right? So I use that, what it's called is a bridge loan, right? So I bridge that gap, the whole acquisition, the rehab, and then once it's complete and I put a tenant in, I do the refinance and pay off the private money, right?
Yes, you won't be paying 12% in perpetuity.
Yeah, you're paying 12%, at the most 6 to 8 months if the rehab takes long. But ideally, you're paying at 2 to 3%. And some banks require a seasoning period, right? Where you have to like wait a certain amount of time before you refinance. They want to see that property perform. They want to see the income coming in and make sure it's justified. So you have to watch out for the seasoning periods, but that's something that you can talk with your banker on.
You can also get a line of credit just personally with, you can use investment accounts, equity in your own home. You pledge collateral and they usually give you securities like 60 to 70%.
Sometimes vehicles, like I think my brother, he's got a line of some of his vehicles that he's got paid off. You could use that. You know, you can kind of get creative on how you can find that financing rate.
And it's a much lower rate than the private one.
Exactly, yeah, at a lower rate. And then the other thing is like, don't let the money like hold you back, like, oh, I don't have enough capital to get into it. The last 3 deals I bought, last week, put under contract, I got 100% financing from the seller, right? And so it was a family friend. He called me up. He said, hey, you know, I have a house that I need painted on. I didn't want to go out there. Like, I was like, there's no money in painting. Like, I just don't, you know. And so Albert and I, we worked together right there from the original number. So we went out there and we started talking, and he was, you know, walking us through like the list of things that he wanted done on the house. And I was like, oh, God, I really don't want to be here and do this. And then he's like, well, yeah, I asked him like, why? I thought he was getting it, you know, ready for the next tenant. He's like, no, I'm actually going to be selling it. And that's when me and Albert looked at each other. I was like, dude, we're not painting this house. We're going to buy this house. Right. And so I offered him, you know, I could pay $145,000 for, he had 3 houses and they're all on the same street. So I offered him $145,000 cash. And if he took that option, I was going to go to my private money guy and say, hey, I have these properties. I'm going to put this money into it. They're going to be worth around this amount. I'll refinance and pay you off. But I said, okay, that's one option. So he was wanting about $190,000 for it. And so I said, I can't get to 190, but you know, what if I did 170,000, but you carry the note, right? And so you finance 100% of the purchase. And then in a year, I'll pay you off, right? So he said, yes, right? So we settled on 170,000 for each property. And so I got him to at a 6% interest rate. And then in a year, it'll balloon. And so at that point, I'll either refinance or I'll flip the properties, right? But it's just another avenue to get into these properties into like little to no money down, right? So don't let like the, you know, I don't have capital, like just study the subject of real estate, study how you can like finance, get creative with it. And that's how you can scale. And that's how I've been able to do it. You know?
So on that note, this is Eric. He goes 100 miles an hour. He's awesome. Being kind of full circle on your first purchase and like jumping in and doing that. Like I've known Eric for a while. I've had the privilege of kind of mentoring him, helping him do a lot of stuff. So it's crazy how deals and things, like the more you're in it, the more you get into the weeds, like what we call is creative financing. And it may not be a straight up 20% down or 25% down, or, you know, it may be an owner financing. So, you know, everyone, when you first get into it, you're like, okay, I need 20% down. Well, 20% down on 100,000, obviously that's $20,000. You know, that's a lot of money. So there's a ton of ways, and I would just push all of you to just show up to these things like as much as you can. Like I said, Bigger Pockets is insane. There's like, you know, just getting out there, because there's guys out there that have cash that want to invest it at 6 or 8 or 10 or 12%, whatever that is. And there's lots of ways to acquire properties. And it's not just like, hey, I need 20% down or 25% down, and is that going to cash flow and whatnot? There's a ton of different, I mean, we could do this every day for
how do you go about developing those relationships if you're brand new?
That's I mean, literally, that's what I was going to say. The most important thing is there's like literally one thing you take from here. It's those relationships. It's relationships with bankers. It's relationships with other people who have been there, done that, trying to find a mentor, trying to find someone to help you with it. Realtors, they're in the know, they're in the weeds doing stuff all the time. They come across, you know, a house that's going to be listed, that's going to have some equity or some sweat equity in it. You know, so just kind of putting it is just really putting in that time and going to events and learning on it. And like I said, Bigger Pockets was not around, and I don't get on it that much, but when I do, I'm like, holy crap, it's insane. Like it's literally everything you need to know. It's kind of overwhelming a little bit, but there's 1,000 different ways to buy that first property and that second property. The beauty of it, and Eric touched on, is once you do get a few of those and you do have some equity, you can come, and I think Bigger Pockets is probably coined, it's the BRRRR. It's literally BRRR.
Yeah, buy, rehab, rent, refinance.
And so that's basically using, so if you have that say, let's, figure of $100,000 rental and maybe, it's leasing out at whatever, 1,200. And you have that 20K is like going in, buying that property at a lower value, putting some sweat equity or renovating it and then getting it rented and then refinancing it and taking your cash back out and putting it back into another one. And that's like the best way to scale is like, you can use all of the things. You can use, the sweat equity, you can use the inflation, you can use thousands of different ways. But I would say the one thing would be just relationships, like just build the relationships, because you never know who's sitting beside you who might have $1 million that's like sitting there in a bank. Well, right now, if your $1 million is sitting in a bank, it's literally, you're losing money So like, there's now more than ever, there's people that want to help. And it does help if you have, if it's the first time and it's a cash investor or whatever, your first deal, they're maybe not going to do, depending on if it's a relationship or family member or whatnot. But if you've done 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 deals and you can show them, then they're going to be more prone to like jump in with you on their next one.
There's a lot of money out there.
It's insane.
And so there's always an opportunity, but I would say, to play devil's advocate a little bit, I've used the BRRRR method many times. It's great.
It's difficult.
It is, and it takes a level of financial discipline that I've seen a lot of investors get burned on.
Yeah.
So when we live in a world where the appraised values and the
Yeah.
rents get off kilter, like we live in right now, the bank says, I'll give you 80% of that appraised value. I've seen investors go and grab all 80% or what, 85, whatever it is. Okay. They take all of it right up front, even though that makes that house not cash flow.
Yeah.
Because they're like, I'll do it again. Well, I need to get as much cash as I can because I've got other opportunities.
No.
And so now you've strung together 5 or 6 deals over a couple of years or shorter, and none of them are cash flow. It only takes one bad deal to ruin. And unfortunately, I've seen that happen. And so you have to be very cognizant of what that house rents for when you do the BRRRR method. Don't necessarily take the 75, 80, 85, whatever that makes will give you of the appraised value. If that appraised value is significantly higher as a percentage from that. Just something to.
And Bigger Pockets has like all these spreadsheets and stuff that you can get on there and plug in these numbers, look at Zillow, see what stuff running for versus, how much it's going to, that mortgage is going to be before you kind of get into it, like analyze it before you pull the trigger on it, right? You definitely want to have some sound fundamentals behind your purchase decisions, right?
Does anybody have any questions for any of these guys?
Can you talk a little bit about Airbnb? Just the market is it better or is it worse or is it the same?
So I currently have one Airbnb. I think you have a couple.
5, yeah.
Yeah.
What's your question, really? I mean, like, is it better or is it worse than what?
Better or?
Well, I mean, so that's, it goes back to what's your time worth, I guess, is like whatever you want to put into it. So on paper, you're looking at Airbnb. Okay. You're like, okay, I can buy this house for just use the 100K, whatever, and rent it for $1,200 a month on a long-term investment. You can also rent it out on Airbnb. So say maybe $100, at whatever percentage that is. Say you're going to get 2,200. Say it's $1,000 difference. To each his own on it. I mean, yeah, the return can be a lot better, and it also the risk is a lot higher too. There's just a lot of, there's a Oklahoma City right now, like every single person I talk to is buying an Airbnb right now, like everybody. And that's fine. I mean, we've been fortunate enough to have 5. Kristen manages all of ours. So, and we reach out to Kim like for stuff. It's a lot more work. So the value on it is more for sure. You also have a tenant every night, a different tenant every night that is you're trying to give you a 5-star review. So
then you're in the hospitality.
You're
business.
literally in the hospitality business, and Kim can probably talk about it.
I thought I should just
Yeah. So, so Kim actually.
Because it's so hot.
Yeah, it is. So Kim manages mine. I have one currently. We have two under rehab that she'll be managing as well. And Jerry did talk about, it is a lot of work. And so that's why I said, hey, Kim, you manage it. And so, ours, I think with Airbnb, it depends a lot on location. It'll be a great location. I think a unique property, like people want to stay there. Right. And so I just knew I didn't have the time to manage, a different tenant every night. And so that's when, Kim let me know that she rented it out. And I mean, we have great reviews. And to be honest, I've never interacted with the guests. Kim manages all of that. So she takes care of it. And even on, with her management fee and everything and all the, bills and everything, the mortgage and everything. I mean, we still cash flow about 1,000, a month or so.
Which is way more than you're gonna be able to do. On
Exactly.
Google.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
But this is what I want to say, is that, everybody right now wants to just jump into Airbnb, but it is owning a small hotel. So a hotel, you have to think in that way. And so you have to analyze a property like you would analyze a hotel, not like you would analyze a regular rental. So if you mess yourself, you can mess yourself up by saying every house can be an Airbnb. Every house cannot be an Airbnb. Location is everything. The aesthetics of the house is everything. It's everything, right? It's a motel. So you really do have to think a little bit differently and make sure you're analyzing that property as a hotel. Like, would people want to come here and stay the night as a hotel? Because if you don't, you can get yourself messed up. And I think a lot of people probably will right now because everyone thinks they can own an Airbnb. And so for me, if you need some help with that, I think, I don't mind helping you, call me. I don't mind helping you, but I will either say, yes, this will be a good Airbnb, or no, it will not. And so you really do need to analyze that and just really make sure you're doing your homework on that, or you get burned, because we're getting oversaturated right now.
Yeah, the biggest difference that I see in ours are that there is a lot of oversaturation at the moment. All of ours are just single 1-bedroom, so it's more your people flying in for business or whatever, staying a week, or not a week, well, sometimes like a night or two and whatnot. What people don't realize, I would always just push anyone that's going to do an Airbnb to probably get someone to manage it, because just like you, when you go to a hotel and and it happens, something breaks, something doesn't work, there's an issue, can't get in, whatever. That's the most urgent thing, period. And so in a long-term rental, if, whatever happens, you can probably get your maintenance guy out tomorrow or whenever. That's not really, you're getting a terrible review if you're not out there really quick. And so, and sadly, like Airbnb is like, they are super, super guest oriented, which is crazy because they can't have their business platform as without the host, but they like the guest wins every time. And so, yes, I think they do absolute cash flow, but I wouldn't buy a property unless it was super unique and you could, just absolutely kill it. And like Kim does a great job on that. It's just different.
And going back to location, like the one that we have is right next to OU Medical, right? And so we have a lot of people getting services that, at OU Medical, they're there for a month, 2 at a time. So I think, buying next to those hospitals is the key, right?
Absolutely.
And, just kind of diversifies your tenant, your guest base, right? And so I definitely recommend looking around hospitals or corporate, setting where, people are traveling for, a month or 2 at a time.
On that note, just like when you go stay at an Airbnb, if you guys do, like, what would you want there? That's how, it's the same level of, service. Are you wanting to put that in, or are you transferring that over to a management company? And I would recommend management company for sure.
Good question.
What would be the best way to transfer my personal home to the LLC?
Not talk to any of us. Talk. I mean that.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say, but talk to your attorney.
Yeah. Yep, there you go. Quit claim deed. Talk to your CPA and your
You can
attorney.
have business purchase it as well and finance it that way if you want to.
Yeah, from a tax standpoint, CPA can help.
Would it be to rent out?
Well, yeah, what would be, there you go. So
To transfer, like the legal document that transfers, quick claim deeds.
Well, that to the LLC question, I hear a lot of investors like, when should I get an LLC? Do I need to get an LLC? At what point do you absolve yourself of that liability and take it out of your personal name?
I would do it immediately.
I'd say day one.
Yeah.
Like to get an L, to set up an LLC is not, I don't know what it is.
It's
anymore.
$104.
It's literally not, it's,
Do not pay an attorney.
Yeah, don't, LegalZoom will charge you 3 times that.
it's, you can set it up.
How much?
Okay.
2,000?
2,000, okay, yeah.
For what? LegalZoom? See, there you
Go
go.
to the Secretary of State.
It's so simple. Yeah, it's so simple. That's gonna evolve, but like I would recommend first house, set it up. One, it's gonna be a huge tax help. I mean, there's so, and then liability alone, like the worst thing that you could do is, you know, buy a property in your name and rent it out and something bad happen and then ruin you for, you know, so I would say definitely first thing.
Yeah, LLCs are not perfect though. It's
No,
worth pointing out,
nothing
like, a judge will still come after your personal assets.
That's right.
Even if the investment property is in an LLC, if they can show that the owner was negligent of working, right? That the LLC does not protect you in that front. It still makes sense to have an LLC. And in Oklahoma, we're one of 2 or 3 states that have the Series LLC. It's not a lot of legal precedent that backs that up, but there is something to be said for the Series LLC for
never
multiple
lost.
properties. You basically you have one umbrella, and then you have an LLC for each house, but you're only having to do one return. Pretty nice little feature. So I would encourage you to look into that. I have never used that, but it is an option in Oklahoma.
So you guys obviously have your LLCs for each home and stuff like that.
I don't, I actually have multiple houses in LLCs, but some people do one per, some people do a dollar value. Like they don't want to exceed 500,000 or $1 million worth of value. Everyone kind of treats it
It's,
different.
yeah, it's kind of like I mean, you could ask that question everyone. Yeah, it's a personal preference. It's going to be up to your attorney and your CPA or your team that's handling that. They all have a different baseline and threshold. So, you know, find some, like I go back to relationships, find that person that works with you and that you trust and whatnot, and your CPA and your attorney and go with them. And, you know, you'll talk to one CPA and they'll be like, you know, I want 5 houses max in an LLC or whatever. And then, you know, some will be like 30, and then you're like, okay, let's do series. It's all over the map. It's to each his own.
It depends on the
Different,
value of the house.
different liability.
Yeah.
Like just, it's basically when you go buy your insurance for your health insurance, your car insurance, it's like you're buying that level of security basically, and what makes you sleep at night.
Anybody have any other questions?
Do you guys have properties in different cities or bigger cities, or like what's the major difference or pros, or is it?
Like in other states and cities in other states?
Like bigger cities as opposed to Oklahoma City, with a smaller population.
Yeah, I'm primarily in Oklahoma City. We've just ventured into another area. That's like next level scale, depending on, because I've felt at home here and been lucky enough to continue to find deals and properties here on the rate that I want to grow. And Oklahoma City is still a very viable place to continue, that's continually growing, and with everything going on. Most investors that are starting here are not really leaving here until they're like 1,000, like lots of properties.
Yeah.
So yeah, or commercial one. Not to say that there's not, because there's other pockets in the world. I prefer to be kind of boots on the ground and know like what's going on. So because I can know like, okay, that area is where I want to be in, or that's an upcoming area, or that area is going down, or whatever it is. So I can I feel like I have a pretty good pulse on the Oklahoma City market. So I prefer just to stay here.
Yeah, that's
I don't
where I'm
think-
at.
yeah.
Northwest Oklahoma City, Northeast Oklahoma City. I have a new construction project there, kind of do a lot more this year there. So yeah, I'd say Northwest Oklahoma City, Northeast Oklahoma City is where I'm at.
If you had, I guess, in that same breath though, if you had people that you trust and relationships in a different area that you like had those same people in that area that you could rely on, a management company, you could rely on maintenance, or you could rely on all those things. You know, if the numbers work, the numbers work, in my opinion.
I go on the same, I'm the same way. I've spent a lot of time looking at other markets. I guess I always think like maybe the grass is green.
It's always-
it's never beat here, or at least not exceeding the returns I would get here to make up for the boots on the ground.
Yeah.
I was talking about.
It's funny because like I've looked in Nashville, I've looked in Oklahoma City, I looked in Omaha, I've looked in all these areas and I'm like, crap, that's literally Oklahoma City either 10 years ago or 10 years in advance. So like, in my opinion, I'm sitting here going, what's the point? I don't know enough about those markets
I do think
to
it's interesting
jump out.
that commercial. though,
Commercial is different.
It's different,
Yeah.
and we talked about this on the call a few weeks ago, like, there is a shift right now of, I'm not gonna say Oklahoma City, but Oklahoma money
Mhm.
investing in other markets,
areas.
bigger markets.
Yeah.
Commercial, that I think is an interesting trend. I don't know if that'll continue or not, but that's definitely happening. But I'm not seeing the same flow on the residential side. It's more out-of-state investors.
Yeah. Because Oklahoma City is one of those markets that if you are on a coast in Florida or California, it's hard to invest in real estate there because oftentimes your mortgage will be more than your rent. So some investors out there have identified markets like Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Wichita as a place where you can cash flow and then have the opportunity for appreciation. So like to Jared's point, unless you found just a smoking deal, had a team built up in another market, I would probably stay closer to home. Because you know your backyard better than another market. What?
I have not done student housing. I would love to. Just haven't had the opportunity to do that. Going back to my first point is relationships. I feel like most of that is going to happen within relationships that are built along the way to where someone's like, hey, we're looking to add, 1,200 units of student housing. I hope at some point in time I can do that, but no, I haven't. Yeah.
Cool.
Do you know someone who's wanting to do student housing? I'm in. I mean, yeah.
Do you carry like any, like legal liability insurance?
I have a general liability, but I also do this company. I do construction company. I don't really have a blanket general liability for my rentals. I don't know if you guys do as
Just
well.
an umbrella.
I just have an umbrella policy and your normal policy that you're going to get from your, whoever it is going to cover the majority of, you can look at that too. And most of them are going to have $1 million or
It's
$2
$1 million or
million.
$2
Yeah.
million.
$1 million or $2 million on any of that stuff that's going to cover that. So whenever you're pulling that and you're like, okay, I want the bait, also like everything else that we've told you guys are probably like, oh, there's 1,000 different ways to do everything. You're kind of weighing everything on the risk of what you feel comfortable taking. Because I know guys that they'll go out and buy properties and put the most minimum basic,
Value.
basically cash value, like whatever, if it got flattened tomorrow by a tornado, as long as I have my cash back, I'm good. But then there's also guys out there that are getting replacement coverage and full blown insurance on that. And so, and it has a little bit to do with what that's cash flowing and kind of the upkeep of that property. But like at first I would just kind of do a basic, policy as far as that goes, but I don't think you're really in need of a general liability policy.
At what point do you look at an umbrella policy?
Most of the time it's going to be multifamily. To be honest, I don't
A
know.
lot of landlord insurance that are really geared towards landlords. We were talking about this earlier, you kind of get to 6 units or 10 units, that seems to be a threshold I've seen a lot. And it'll start kicking in at that, and it's just included, it's not like you have to ask for it.
Yeah.
But they do that when they're not even insuring contents, that sort of thing.
And I think it helps lower the cost too. If you do
Yeah.
a blanket umbrella over all of your properties, you can get better rates, right? Spread across through it. But
early on, I agree completely, just go get policy.
That goes
I would
back.
just tell them it's, your landlord.
Yeah.
You don't have to insure contents.
That goes back to your insurance agent, just like your doctor, your banker, all the above. Like, who do you trust? Like, they need to look out for you first and foremost. So like, I luckily have an agent that I've built, many years of, and they'll call me and be like, hey, we can put these in an umbrella policy and save you $500 a month or whatever it may be, so, I lean on the people who are experts in their field to kind of tell me what to do. And that's worked out decently well.
And call
for me.
around, just call a couple of
Yeah.
ones, see what they recommend. And then also look too at your, like if Jared was saying, your personal risk, how much risk you're willing to take. Like, at the beginning, and now I'm trying to transition a little bit, but I have a lot of, cash value policies, which is basically just enough to cover what I owe the bank, right? In case something were to happen to that property. But I'm, the younger I'm in the process of like, acquisitions and growth, right? So I can, I'd rather have a little bit more cash flow to be able to sustain that growth, right? So just kind of assess your own personal situation.
Yeah, I would say too, like, cause like when you first jump into, we're all like, okay, Allstate, Farmers, whatever, all the big ones. One thing I would say with an rentals in your agency or whatnot, I'd probably go to more of an independent agent that can go and like shop you around instead of a farmer's who's going to say, they're going to have just a little bit more leeway and a little bit probably better pricing because they're going to be able to shop that around to several different brokers. They're probably still going to write it under Allstate or one of those deals, but I would always push to, once you start buying a few properties, to find an independent agent brokerage that can work, with a bunch of different companies, because they all compete every year. There'll be one of them will be cheaper this year, and then the next one is cheaper the next year, and they kind of go back and forth.
Bigger pockets is really helpful for that.
Yeah.
I know there's a few here in Oklahoma, because we deal with such crazy insurance.
We do. It's
Requires in this state that
it's extremely high.
yeah. Actually had a meeting in commercial, random aside, from insurance, Bank First Insurance, and they went to like a global meeting for Lloyd's of London. And this year, Oklahoma is the most expensive place in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's because we've had the crazy ice storm and stuff going on. But there are like bigger pockets, and people will share a lot of the insurance, independent insurance brokers that are more geared towards landlords. So people check.
Good question. Okay.
Time management has obviously been one of our hardest things to kind of, do this with, but you guys partner with GC to fix the properties, or you guys do it on your own? Y'all are mentoring us, would you say a little hands-on as possible or not hands-on as possible?
I'll answer that real quick. Go with what you know. I GC my own. Eric GCs. I don't know what you do. I mean, depends on. I would just say it depends on the level of that and what you feel comfortable with. Because you do see a lot of people that are like, okay, we're going to go in here and renovate and do like just a cosmetic paint, maybe a little bit of tile, whatever. Look at it as an investment and not like, okay, so a lot of people are like, I'm going to save $5,000 doing that. Okay. And it took you 2 or 3 or 4 months to do that. You didn't really save anything. You actually cost yourself money. People are like, okay, I should have, I can use a GC and it's going to be X amount. You need to look at that like, okay, I can do that. One, I don't have the time or the, time management. That's the one thing that we can't buy or sell or stop or do anything. So what's that time worth to you? And then more than not, I see guys going in and updating those, and then all of a sudden they look up and it's 6 months and they have only money out and no money in, and they could have paid 3 contractors to do the job. So be wary of that. And we do ours, but I also am a GC and have building and all that, so that's a little bit different. Eric as well.
I kind of do a hybrid model. I have a GC that I use, but I'm very hands-on.
Right.
So I would second what Jared said. It kind of depends on your personality. If you want to be more involved, be more involved. You're not gonna sleep at night if you're not involved. If you need to be that person.
That's a blanket statement over everything.
Yeah,
so like be as involved as you want to be. I'm
sitting here texting my GC and using my phone, like I've got a project going on, but I'm not there on site, right? But I have at least a pretty good understanding of what's going on, and he hits me up. He knows we work long enough together that he knows to ask me about certain decisions. So.
Like your first few too, like I don't know how, go ahead and budget for that. Be there every day, kind of learn from that GC and learn kind of all the things like, you know, the first few you can do those, and then maybe the fifth one you're like, I'm going to try this myself and I think I can save myself 10 or 15 grand, then try it. If it doesn't work, then go back. But like, at least for the first few, you know, 4 or 5 or whatever, I would say hire somebody, and then, you know, you're going to learn like, okay, how all these things need to roll out. And then, you know, you can just watch him and learn from that. And then maybe, you know, if you want, you can jump in and do that. It's just time management.
And like all contractors, they're great GCs and they're terrible.
Right. Yeah. You get a good one and a bad one. 100%.
They're working, and then the ones that want to supervise. Like,
Yeah.
I want somebody who's gonna get in there and get something done. So,
And something that I found too, like if you are GCing, right? If you're, you know, call a couple different subcontractors, right? But you'll get their opinion and be like, hey, you know, what do we need to do here? Or what's next after you do this, right? And so if you're GCing it, you ask those questions, try to ask as many questions as possible, because they'll kind of like direct you on how to go about the process, right? And they'll educate you and call different ones, and they'll give you different opinions, you know, and then just the one that go with the ones that seem a little bit more confident and like just makes logically more sense. And so I definitely recommend, you know, project managing it, you GCing it yourself to get that experience, right? Just in case you start, you know, you do hire a full-on general contractor where they take over the whole scope and you're not having to hire individual trades. You have an idea of how much that should cost and how long it takes,
you
right?
can call bullshit.
Exactly, yeah.
Which they,
Yeah, and that's what a lot of what I was doing, right? I was GCing it myself, hiring the subcontractors, lining them up, scheduling them and all that. But I kind of, you know, I've got too much going on right now for me to be doing that. We hired a project manager recently, and so he's kind of stepped into that role. And I like to do everything in-house. We have our property management in-house, we have our construction in-house, we own an installation company, and so it's all kind of in-house. And so now we brought on a project manager to oversee the construction and all of that. But I know, you know, what those timelines should be, what those budgets. So when the project manager comes to me, comes back with, you know, the bids that the subcontractors got, then I know if that's in line or if that's way out of line, right? And if we need to put it out to rebid and get other bids from other contractors. So I definitely, you know, recommend if you have the time and you feel comfortable with it, and step a little bit outside of your comfort zone, right? You know, there's YouTube, you know, you can get on YouTube, research all this stuff, and really just try to like immerse yourself and learn, right? Because nobody can take that education that you've gotten, right? Nobody can take that away from you, and you're always going to have that, right? So I definitely recommend, you know, trying to get as involved as possible if you have the time, right? That's my personal opinion.
Let's give it up for these guys. No other questions? They'll probably hang out. Shiva will hang out for a while if you have any lending questions. But we appreciate all you guys coming out. It's super cool to see how many people are invested or interested in investing in real estate. And please consider Weston Maine as a resource. You know, I work with a lot of investors. I work with Paxton on a deal, and Kimberly's also great. And we've, you know, taken a lot of knowledge from these guys that we like to take out into the market with our clients. So please consider us a resource, and we appreciate you guys coming, and just hang out if you have any questions. But otherwise, thanks for coming out.
Real quick, don't be afraid to ask. Like that's the one thing that I do, like in jumping in on that first deal. Like there's so many people, I mean, I've talked to friends and people for years and years and years, and that, you know, didn't pull the trigger on a deal or didn't do something, or they're just asking and asking and asking. Like there's so many people, especially in Oklahoma City, that will help you. Like I would, you know, going back to relationships, like try to find someone that's, you know, either a year or two in advance or 5 or whatever. Like I don't know very many people that are going to tell you no, that they're not going to, you know, not going to help you. I mean, it's a few questions can save you thousands and thousands. So just do that and use Weston Maine. So anyway, thanks for coming out.
So within resource plan, you know, I think that's.
Yeah, I mean,
How about the Greek magic language? I hate the